After gushing over the anniversary update in last week's episode, it's time for a change of tone. As the greatest updates are well and truly behind us, it's time we visit some of the worst updates ever. And no, I'm not exaggerating. You get a 3-for-1 special on this episode, as all three of them were pretty small, very similar, and came out very quickly from one another. The 3 updates we'll cover are Black Powder Stashes, Dark Relics, and Smugglers Fortune. I shit you not, I quit Sea of Thieves because of these updates and didn't return until October 2019. Let's start with Black Powder Stashes, an update that launched on the 17th of July 2019, which marked a gap of around 10 weeks between updates. As you can imagine, the gap between anniversary and the updates either side was quite large both ways, so the first half of the year was kinda bare. Black Powder Stashes marked Rare's new update system, where they ditched the cadence of semi-regular updates that launch when they are ready to once every month. This was an exciting prospect, as we get new content every month, just not to the same scale as the year 1 updates, but it was less content much more often. Black Powder Stashes dropped with a variant of the mercenary voyages that we discussed briefly in a previous episode, although this is where the downturn began. These voyages were based in each of the 4 regions, with the Devil's Roar being an Athena variant. It didn't give you any Athena loot, but it was just harder. More tedious for Pirate Legends. Essentially, these were multi-stage voyages allowing you to pick up gunpowder, mega kegs, and merchant crates. If you completed all 3 in the original region, then you could purchase the Mercenary Figurehead, a time-limited ship cosmetic. The Athena variant was only an opportunity to gain some extra doubloons, which, to be fair, were quite rare at the time. The other variants were Black Powder runs to the east and west. These were similar voyages that you had to dig up gunpowder from 4 skeleton forts. You could add an additional challenge of completing them 3 times or flying the Reaper's Mark to earn an extra commendation and unlock the inevitable Reaper sails and flag. I will say these cosmetics were the best part of these updates, but I wasn't interested enough to play them. You could also sell these kegs to any trading company, which was also nice. But that basically covers the meat of this update. There were some quality of life features too, such as mermaid gems appearing as washed up loot, in forts and in shipwrecks as random spawns. Other changes included reduced time to raise a sloop's mast, reduced health for skeleton lords when fighting smaller crews, and the removal of Eye of Reach skeletons. You can still find them in the Shores of Gold though. You could argue this was more of a quality of life / balancing update, as there was a wealth of other changes. You can check the patch notes down in the description. Initially, I did try to play some of the new stuff in Black Powder Stashes, but ultimately, I found it really boring. It felt like this was rehashed content and was a major step down from Anniversary. Granted, we were told we wouldn't be getting an update that big ever again, but the drop-off hit hard. I took a break for this update and waited to see what next month would bring us. Dark Relics launched on the 14th of August 2019 and continued the theme of reused content. The main voyage system introduced some new loot items for us to dig up that were specific to these new voyages. They were known as the Dark Relic voyages, one to each of the 4 regions in the game. All you had to do with these voyages was kill some skeletons, dig up some relics, kill some more skeletons, and dig up more relics, with chance of Devil's Roar trinkets or ancient bone dust at the end. Even the Devil's Roar variant was just extra ashen loot and having to trudge all the way to Molten Sands for the final chapter. As you can imagine, that's a hell of a sale. You could get the mercenary wheel, cannon, and capstan if you wanted to trudge through these voyages, a nice reward for a hell of a boring time. These were just Gold Hoarder and Order of Souls voyages smashed together. The only saving grace of this update was the introduction of the Reaper's Chest. This chest paints a beacon across the horizon and can be found at shipwrecks. Once picked up, the beacon disappears, but the chest will always stay on the map. People did fight over these, due to them offering a generous number of doubloons, which was still quite rare. I would argue this new sandbox item was the best thing we got into October's update. They're a bit stale nowadays, but bounty variants are more than worth a detour if they're close. The 6 new loot items were the Evil Eye, the Mutinous Effigy, the Enchantment Vessel, the Hexing Skull, the Bewitching Doll, and the Ritual Skull, all of which would not be seen again for years, aside from the last one. Again, these were just loot items that had no use outside of their voyages. At least they sold for a hefty amount of gold. We got some quality of life features like Black Powder Stashes, which was always welcome. Hit detection supposedly was improved, although I didn't play enough to verify it. They also added the Harpoon Rowboat, which was the first rowboat variant we had and allowed you to harpoon loot or drag yourself on land. It wasn't game changing, but it was a nice change nonetheless. Once again, full patch notes are in the description. The main body of content, the new voyage, was a poor reskin of older voyages, and it was at this point I felt the game was in trouble. I barely touched this update, aside from starting a new Dark Relic voyage and quitting it after it was started. Finally, we're moving on to maybe the worst of the 3, Smugglers Fortune, which launched on the 11th of September 2019. Smugglers Fortune introduced another new mercenary voyage, the Reaper's Grave voyages, and as you can imagine, these were just reskinned voyages again. The Reaper's Grave and Legendary Reaper's Grave voyages tasked you with heading to Shipwreck Bay to dig up rag and bone crates. Think of these as cargo that can't be destroyed, having a label where you deliver these to sea posts. Shipwreck Bay is a central island, so imagine the bloated sailing time if you had to go to all 8 sea posts. That is not a fun time. I'm not a fan of this at all, and it really stretched the content to its limit. There were 2 good changes with this update at least, where we got storage crates and the black market. The black market was a new shop run by Duke. Fuck, I miss him. And this would stock the many recolours we would see drip fed to us over the course of the next couple years. It started with the Fearless Bone Crusher clothes and the Deep Ocean Crawler stuff. These were nice sets, but recolours nonetheless. On the other hand, storage crates revitalised the way supplies were collected and deposited, allowing you to loot islands much quicker, again being a massive quality of life update. That's the main crux of this update, apart from one of the most controversial changes to the game, the Pirate Emporium. Rare had originally made plans to release a microtransaction store with the first major update, the Captaincy update, but delayed it after fan feedback. After many delays, they finally got it out. At this point, the game was 18 months old and Rare needed to fund development if we wanted more content updates. More so, they have to prove to Microsoft they can make a profit out of a live service. The Pirate Emporium launched with a wealth of new content, featuring pets as the main draw. These were the parrot and monkey with their 3 subspecies. To Rare's credit, the pets were really good value for money, and I think they're worth every penny to this day. We also got new emotes, something we hadn't had since launch, which were Gold Hoarder themed. And some new ship sets based on legendary franchises, Banjo-Kazooie being the first one. Originally, the plan with these ship sets was to release non-lore focused heritage ship sets. If you want a great breakdown of these sets, my close friend Captain Blubber breaks down all the Easter eggs on his channel, so go check it out. Overall, the Emporium at this point was quite reasonable, aside from the really expensive ship cosmetics, a necessary evil if we wanted more content updates. Although, if they were like these last 3, then that would be a rip-off. But we know that wasn't the case, luckily. Smugglers Fortune also came up with some more quality of life updates, such as an arena crossplay toggle, Sea Dog Tavern updates, a new cutscene for the ending of Shores of Gold, and roaming skeleton ships. Check out the description again if you want a full rundown. Besides, in the context of Rare coming out and saying Anniversary was the biggest update we'll ever have, and a shift to 3 underwhelming updates in a row, it's easy to see why this was the end for Sea of Thieves. In a world where live service games get shit canned all the time, I genuinely thought this would be the end for Sea of Thieves support. It's odd looking back on it now, thinking how far we've come, but hindsight is 2020. The game ebbs and flows like a lot of games, but looking back and seeing this stretch from May to October with no real content was concerning to say the least. I barely touched Sea of Thieves throughout this period, and one could say I quit it. It was and is my favourite game too, so it was all the more frustrating. At least things started looking up in October with a smashing PvP update and another clickbait title for me next week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like and subscribe to keep up to date with the videos. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.
Show